Does the social learning theory contradict the instinct theory?
Key theorist Bandura (STL 1966) came up with the social learning theory that an athlete's behavior is learned through interaction with the environment and those around them. A young footballer who may have a role model that they look up to and copies may have a positive and negative effect on them. This is because they may be analyzing how a defender can identify where the attacker is going. However, if their role model displays behavior which isn't socially acceptable but goes without a punishment, then the young footballer may think that it's acceptable and may copy these behaviors. This relates to Bandura, who conducted an experiment where they put adults in a room with Bodo dolls and allowed children to observe what they did. Some of the adults would hit the dolls, and when he put the children in the room, most of them would copy the actions of the adults, which conveys that they learnt the behaviour. This reinforces the fact that the social learning theory suggests all behaviour is learnt either through the environment or observed by role models. However, criticisms of this theory is that an individual may not always copy what they have observed, and this behaviour may be good but can also be bad. If bad behavior is observed but isn't punished, then it's likely the behavior but is punished, then it's likely the behavior won't be copied by another individual. Bandura 1973 said that aggressive behavior away from sport is more likely to be demonstrated by those involved or interested in sport, which allow contact. This means that individuals who are more aggressive would want to play sports that socially accept contact, for example, rugby. Dollard et al. 1939 states that aggression occurs because frustration arises due to a goal blockage. For example, if an individual wants to play well, but there's a defender that may be stopping them from achieving this, then the theory suggests that the player will physically harm them indefinite. This is known as the frustration aggression hypothesis. This hypothesis bases that we drive to achieve the best, and if the goal is blocked, then aggression from frustration occurs. For example, this may be a dirty tackle in football, and this is gotten away with, and the individual succeeds, then if the individual succeeds, then it will make them feel better, which is known as the cathartic release. However, if this unacceptable behavior is caught, then can increase frustration. This theory can be linked with the social learning theory as it involves the environment which has caused a personality trait that is aggressive. Criticism of this is that it's not always the case. For example, if a player's goal is being blocked by another player, then it will not always result in physical harm. As well as this, it doesn't account for the fact that every person is different and behaves differently, as everyone has different methods of coping strategies to deal with aggression from frustration. The aggression cue hypothesis, which was built upon by Berkowitz 1969, this theory suggests that if frustration occurs from a blocked goal, then the individual will become more aroused, which causes them to become psychologically more hyped. However, this theory conveys that frustration won't necessarily cause an individual to become aggressive, but the theory suggests that there's an increased chance of aggression. This frustration may occur from a bad call from a referee or if another player is being verbal to an individual. It will result in increased aggression from increased arousal from these environmental cues. As well as this, if there's no aggressive cue, then the chance of aggression will be decreased. This hypothesis lacks criticism as it accounts for the fact that each individual can respond to aggression from frustration differently, and it won't always result in aggression being expressed.
Occur from many different reasons. What stimuli can coaches acknowledge that will cause individuals to behave aggressively?
Every sport differs in terms of contact. For example, rugby requires full contact, whereas netball involves no contact at all. As said by Bandura 1973, there has been findings to suggest that contact sports have a casual effect on aggression both in and out of the sporting context. This means that contact sports can be an environmental cue for players to have a higher level of arousal or anger, as suggested in the frustration aggression hypothesis and the aggression cue hypothesis. As well as this, rivalry can result in aggression, for example, between two closely matched football teams. This can cause players to perhaps become more assertive during the game, but may be unable to control the situation they are in, so the individual may become aggressive as a result due to the heated intensity of the situation. If this situation does occur and one player on the opposition is aggressive either physically or verbally to another player, then this aggression can cause the other players to not have a lower restraint towards expressing their aggression. So coaches can identify this and prevent it from happening. Coaches that have previously positively reinforced players and there has shown to have a positive effect on them can positively reinforce them again to stop frustration from occurring, which can lower aggression.
Coaches, and others, for example, spectators of governing bodies, reduce aggression in sport?
A player in a game of basketball may be constantly getting bad calls for travelling with the ball. This may cause a player to feel frustrated. This may be identified by a coach who can call a timeout. Calling a timeout can allow this player to calm down by positive self-talk or counting to 10. These strategies may be able to allow a player to be relieved of the build-up of frustration and clear their mindset. A clear mindset can be obtained before going into the game by mentally rehearsing and distancing themselves from any aggression cues. If there is rivalry between two players and the situation becomes intense and aggressive, then the coach can substitute a player to avoid this aggression from becoming punishable. For example, if a basketball player punches a player on the opposing team, then it could result in being banned for a few games. The coach can prevent this aggression from occurring by doing this substitution. Coaches may also be able to emphasize non aggressive role models that can be observed by other players. And as experimented by Bandura using the Bodo dolls and the social learning theory, players may copy these positive behaviors. Others, for example, spectators, can be separated in terms of teams and what and they support. Can be separated in terms of the teams that they support, which is what generally happens in football, so that there is no aggression between fans. Restriction between fans can be enforced by employing more staff at games so that the communication between the staff and police can be more efficient if an aggressive situation did occur. Governing bodies can ban aggressive players so that other players will realise what the punishments are and will therefore be less likely to be aggressive. Promotion of awards to players who show good behaviour can be given. This will likely have an impact on other players who would want to be positively reinforced.